Hi, welcome to the Daily Vent, a medical mom podcast. My name is Nicole and I am your host. And today we have a very exciting guest. We have Danielle. A lot of you may know her. She is very popular on social media about sharing her amazing miracle twins and her journey through the NICU and so many trials and tribulations. And so we are going to welcome Danielle here. She's going to give you a little bit of a background of her story, of how her and her husband got pregnant and had miracle little twins who are now home and thriving. And we're going to just talk about their journey. So go ahead, Danielle, and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, my name's Danielle. I am a 30-year-old identical twin mom to Adriana and Sophia. My husband and I have been married almost three years. I have a BRCA1 mutation. Do you know what that is? BRCA mutation. It's like it's a cancer risk mutation that puts you at high risk for ovarian and breast cancer.
I knew about that.
My mom has. Yeah. So because of that, as like a risk reduction, when I was younger, I had my fallopian tubes removed, which is like part one of like a multi-step process I'll be doing for risk reduction. So the only trade-off at 23 was like, you have to do IVF because you can't get pregnant naturally. So we're like, okay. Did IVF, transferred one embryo. I'm a nurse practitioner in the intensive care unit. So I was like, had positive pregnancy tests, HCGs were good, whatever. They're like, we'll see you at 6.5 weeks for your ultrasound to confirm pregnancy. But I have access to ultrasound machines. So I was like scanning myself at work all the time. And it's so funny now looking back at some of the first videos that I have, because I thought I was seeing like one little heartbeat. And then a couple of days later, one of my friends who's a nurse was in the room with me. And she's like, Danielle, there's two. And now in the previous videos, I can see both, but like I didn't even know that I was like looking for both. So I found out I was having twins on my own at work one day. Obviously, like confirmed on real ultrasound that like, yes, you're having twins. Everything was good. I mean, I was like miserable in my first trimester. We went to Paris for a wedding / baby moon. That was like 21 into 22 weeks. I got off the plane in Paris. The next day, my legs like totally blow up like balloons. But we're like, okay, it must just be from traveling. Like I'd worn compression socks, probably whatever. We're in Paris for a week. Whole time, I can't walk. My legs are so swollen. Like I'm a mess. And I have some viral videos too of like my legs, like literally the size of tree trunks. Yeah, they were bad. So I come home, still super swollen, not getting better. I'm like, whatever. I have an MFM appointment on Friday. We got home on a Wednesday, and they were already measuring a little bit small prior to my trip, but they're like, they're probably just going to be small babies. You have twins. One, their marginal cord insertion to a vessel cord, like it just wasn't perfect. So we're like, okay, we're just going to watch it. Go into the office. They check my blood pressure, and it was like 140/90, which is normal. But for me, I usually run like low hundreds. And I was like, I think I'm getting I think I have preeclampsia. They're like, no, your blood pressure's in normal range. I was like, but my legs are like just from travel. He's like, listen, I'll just send off some labs, like just to be sure. And we got the labs done. They resulted on Saturday. My husband and I'm a nurse practitioner. My husband's a physician. We're not in the OB world. So we're looking at like the Quest website, like with my results. And we're like, oh, they're normal. No, they were not normal. We're like, oh, it's just like a little bit elevated. But no, I was looking at the wrong value. So next day, Sunday, I had been checking my blood pressure at home just to like see kind of what was like going on. I felt fine except for the leg swelling. I'm in the car and I'm like going to my brother's baseball tournament. I'm like, let me get out and just check my blood pressure. 220 something over like 170. Up. And I feel fine. And I show my husband and he's like, that's not real. So I check the other arm just as high. He's like, that's not real. He's like, lay down on the couch for 10 minutes to check it again. It's like nothing's working. My stepmom comes over with their home machine. I'm checking, not working. Call the OB, waiting for her to call back. And I said to Andrew, I'm like, listen, they're going to send us in. So like, let's just get in the car and start driving.
Yeah.
Before we get in the car, I developed this like severe epigastric pain right here. Like, like right upper quadrant / epigastric, like severe. I start crying hysterically. I'm like, get in the car. So there's like 2 hospitals within the same system near us. We had to go to the further one. And I told my husband, I'm like, pull over in Venice. I'm not going to make it. Like and he's crying because he's like, we're losing the babies. Like there's no way.
Yeah.
The OB calls back. I'm crying hysterically. She's like, get to Venice, like pull off and get to Venice. I'm like, I'm getting off the exit right now. Blood pressure's still just as high there, whatever. They run the PCR labs again, like the preeclampsia labs. And they're like, did you tell us that you didn't have, like, your labs were normal? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, first of all, I just looked in the system. They were not normal. So your PCR is like your protein creatinine ratio in your urine.
Mm-hmm.
To be classified as preeclampsia, it has to be over 300. Mine was over 10,000.
Why didn't they call you right away? Because it was the weekend?
So in Quest, like the Quest ones, they were about 3,000. So I think they just like didn't get the results, I'm assuming, like is what happened. I think because they all happened, like they resulted on Saturday night. This was Sunday morning. Like it was all just like kind of quick. So obviously they admit me, naive me. I'm on a mag drip. Did you ever go on a mag drip?
Yes. It hurts.
Awful. So wouldn't wish it on anyone. So I'm like laying there. I'm like, oh, I'm probably not gonna be able to work the rest of my pregnancy. Oh, we're probably gonna have to cancel our flights for this next wedding coming up.
Yeah.
The OB comes in the morning. I'm like asking him all these questions. He's like, honey, you are not leaving this hospital till you have this baby. I was like, what?
How many weeks were you at that point?
I was at 23-0 on that day that I got admitted.
Oh my God.
Stayed pregnant until 25-3. And I was like not feeling great the whole night before. My OB was like, let's just get an ultrasound, see what's going on. My whole belly was filled with fluid. So she like woke me up. I fell back asleep, woke me up at like 10 in the morning and was like, you're having these babies today. It's time. So they were born 25-3, October 25th. Adriana was our baby A. She was 1 pound 4 ounces. And Sophia was our baby B. She was 11 ounces.
Wild.
So she did not come out like breathing, nothing. Like her APGAR was 1. So they thought like they were going to lose her. They finally got, they got her intubated, whatever. They got both girls to the NICU and everything was okay, I would say, like after that time. You go through like your honeymoon phase for the first 48 hours. Yes. Then they had some like couple ups and downs, but after that we were like pretty much status quo until like it wasn't. And then we ended up spending a whole year and then 2 weeks shy of 1 year in the NICU with Adriana. Sophia came home after 4.5 months. But now they're both home and they're miracles and they're doing amazing.
Which is wild.
That was a very long-winded.
No, I love it. Which is wild because I remember, so Danielle is local. We're both somewhat local-ish, and I'm in like North Tampa and she's in Sarasota area. So honestly, in Florida terms, we're both live in the same area. But we actually met up at, backstory. So we met up. Obviously, we met on social media months ago. I had found Danielle on social media when we were in our NICU journey and just couldn't believe that there was someone local that was going through this. And I had reached out to her and then eventually we had connected. And then she was talking about possible trach stuff. And so at this point, John had his trach. And so I had reached out to her and I wanted to be there and support her through that decision. And we'll get to the trach stuff later. But John ended up transferring to Johns Hopkins for his tracheopexy last summer. And so we ended up meeting up to see each other, which was really cool. We sat for 30 minutes or 40 minutes and just talked. And it was really nice to just meet each other in person and talk and kind of catch up on everything. But there's something that, she said is like, I remember you saying that when Sophia was born, you guys were like, worried only really about her because she was so small. And then she ended up being
Adriana wasn't
she went home after 4.5 months and then it's like was opposite. And that's just wild to me, these kids like 11 ounces. That's wild.
It's crazy because I don't want to say we didn't think about Adriana because we did, but like our mind was like spiraling over Sophia. We were like, Adriana's fine. Like in the beginning when they're that small, they were in separate rooms like next to each other, but we spent like so much time in Sophia's room because we thought we were going to lose her like those first few days. Like she was just so tiny. And it's crazy because they hadn't done a growth scan on me since like the week before, like a couple days before I went into the hospital. And they were like, let's give you 3 weeks in the hospital here before we do another growth scan because we want to give them an opportunity to grow. I obviously had ultrasounds, but they were going off of estimated weights from the 2.5 weeks prior of that growth scan. Sophia was born at the exact same weight that her estimated growths were 3 weeks prior. So she literally was not growing at all. I saw my placentas in the OR. I was like, I want to see them, show them to me. They were this big, like the size of an
Oh,
apple, I would say, like tiny. They didn't
what?
work. Like they just literally didn't. They were covered in clots. Like they just like did not work. Yeah. I just,
Is that
and
part
it's
of
crazy.
having
Like,
preeclampsia, or is that a whole different issue?
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's part of having preeclampsia. But basically, like your vessels are like subpar and they don't, like all the
Okay.
blood supply is just like not as functional. And then like all that fluid and blood just kind of like seeps other places. And that's what causes the high blood pressure. So the only cure to it is to get rid of the placenta, which is beach like to deliver. And then, I was
Oh, yeah.
I was off blood pressure meds within the first like week and a half. Like it's crazy how fast you just recover. I mean, I was very fortunate. It was quick, but yeah, it's insane. Hmm.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
So
it's
I would
just,
say like, yeah, it's nuts.
well, and they probably told you. I mean, I've seen it a lot too on these micropreemie pages. Is with twins, the reality of them both surviving is just miraculous, especially with one being that small. Because typically,
Yeah.
you don't see both twins make it. You know.
No, and I had connected with some moms with micro preemies who had twins, and a lot of them, because I shared our journey like the whole time, like when I was in the hospital antepartum. So I continued that while we were in the NICU, and I had multiple moms reach out to me saying like, "You're giving me so much hope." And then like one of their twins had ended up passing away, like more than one person. So I mean, yeah, when they're that small, the likelihood of and I think it shouldn't surprise us that they had different courses. Like it's not like they were like third term preemies who had, just a little bit of time in the NICU for feeding and respiratory support or whatever. So
Hmm.
obviously their journeys ended up looking very different, but it's not that surprising that the fact that they're both alive is the miracle in itself. So everything else was just kind of stuff that you have to go through.
Such a miracle. They have such a testimony.
You know,
And
as
what's
you know.
also crazy is you had a super viral video, and so the girls are identical because you did IVF, so it was one embryo and it split. So they are completely identical.
Yeah.
But since their
Mhm.
journeys, because they were basically formed outside of the womb with masks and intubations and different things, they don't look alike at all. They're starting to look a little bit more
No,
alike, but it's crazy.
they are definitely starting to look more like, yeah. So what the video that Nicole's talking about was like me when I was pregnant. I was terrified because my husband's also an identical twin. And my mother-in-law used to put like a little magic marker on one of the baby's toes so she knew which one was which. So we're like, we're going to have to do that. I looked at Etsy for like identification bracelets, whatever. They look nothing alike. And it's because like Adriana was in the NICU for 11 and a half months. And, Sophia was so tiny. She's still really tiny. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, but they are looking more alike now. Like I see them.
Yeah.
Actually, someone at the mall the other day said to me like, oh my gosh, how do you tell them apart? I guess like only because moms. And I was like, I don't think they look anything alike. I think most people don't think they look alike, but just the fact that someone said that to me, I was like, okay, there's hope.
Yeah. I do.
Things are getting
I
better.
do think they're looking more and more like every day. I also think that Adriana, when they were pumping her full of food in the NICU, and that girl was like swole, and so she's lost like some weight since she's come
Literally
home.
like
Yeah, she looks much more comfortable, and that's
4 pounds.
literally something like I'll never understand is the NICU. And we'll talk about this, but like if you are a micropreemie parent, you know that like the NICU is like feed, 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 which I get. I understand, especially in the early months. But at a certain point, when you have BPD, which is chronic lung disease, for people who don't know what that is, the more weight you have. So, like, yes, you need to gain weight and grow for your lungs to heal and grow. And that's like the cure for BPD, essentially, is time and growth. But if you have too much fat and you are too heavy, it's literally counterintuitive. It is hurting your lungs more because you're having to work harder to breathe. And so you have to be careful with gaining too much weight. And that was something our doctors always said to us. And so when Danielle would come to us and be like, oh my God, they want her to gain more weight and all this stuff, I'm like, what is going on over there? Because she's thick, like she's good.
It's crazy. She was at her heaviest in the NICU. She was 18 pounds. And it's funny because her and Sophia were always the same length. Sophia was 10 pounds and she was 18. And like this kid, she couldn't move. I mean, she had like, the nurses and I would joke like she needed a training bra because she literally like had fat in places that babies just should not have fat. Like, I'm like, this isn't a chunky baby. This is like literally obesity. And my husband and I kept asking, like, what are the long-term ramifications of this? Like, is she more predisposed to coronary artery disease? Like, this is at this point not healthy.
Yeah.
Like, we've crossed the line. And it's so funny. You and I have the same pulmonologist now for our kids.
Dr.
Because
John.
when we got discharged, Dr. John is the best, but we got discharged from the NICU, and I think I texted you. I was like, we're never stepping foot back in that hospital again, because we had a really bad experience, and like at the end things got very nasty with the medical team, and like the consultants kind of like sided with the NICU, and it just became very like not good. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, these doctors that are giving us a hard time, like we still have to see them when she gets discharged. Like, it's not like the NICU, like pulmonology, cardiology, we still have to see these people. I was like, my husband's like, I don't want to see these people. Like, they disrespect us. They're not doing what's best for our kid. Like, they're just so like focused on whatever's going on. So all that to say, like, I had texted you, like, who's your pulmonologist? I need a new pulmonologist. I will drive. I don't care. So that's how we got with Dr. John. But the first time we met him, he was like, it's not like every ounce of weight equals new lung tissue. Like, he's like, yes, they need to grow, but they also need to like just give them time. He's like, it has to be proportional. It's not like you just keep pumping them with food. So at the end of our time in the NICU, when she was starting to PO feed, obviously she was using so much more energy than she ever had, but she also had like this buffer of extra weight. So she was losing some weight, but we're like, it's useless fat that she's losing. She's burning. They didn't like that. They lost their minds. They went up on her calories. They added back MCT oil on a 1-year-old, which once you hit a certain point in time is like for weight loss. It was just this whole thing. But Dr. John, our pulmonologist, was like, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. So she's lost 4 pounds since she's been home because she eats when she's hungry. And that's like part of the reason I was so against a G-tube if we didn't need it, because I was like, other people are going to still control how much is going into her. And this kid is not hungry. Like, she's vomiting undigested formula multiple times a day. She's miserable. So yeah, yes, good nutrition and growth, but like, I think they get to a point in time in their age where like, you just need to let them be. It's not like they're going to lose new lung tissue if they lose a little bit of weight.
Yeah. I mean, even in like a full-term baby or like a 36-weeker, they're so set on, you have to take this many bottles and this much and this and that. And it's like, when someone goes home with a perfectly healthy baby, like there is no set thing. Like there's just so much pressure. And like you said on the G-tube stuff, like with John, like when we deal with, so my son has a trach and a G-tube for anyone who's new here, but he was a 23-weeker, but there's so much like from GI of like, he needs this many calories, he needs this much water, he needs this much, this and this and this and this, because he burns this many calories. And so it's very like regimented, and I have had to fight to do blended foods and stuff, which has been great for him. So I'm not just giving him crap all day, which is good. And it's made a world of difference. And I have a whole episode on that, but it's, these kids are held to like a higher standard when it's like, just let them be babies. Like we forget that they're babies sometimes because everything else comes before that. And it's a shame, but I get it, but it's hard.
There's two sides of it. And I remember saying to them, because they were giving me a hard time one day about like, she didn't eat as much one day, and how it works in the NICU for people who don't know, like if you're going home without stuff, like, and which is what, by the grace of God, we were able to do, babies have to eat a certain percentage of their total intake for the day by mouth, and you have to do that for a certain amount of days, and then they'll take the NG tube out, and then you have to meet shift minimums, and all this stuff. And I remember like there was a day where she like didn't eat as much as she did, or she lost like 5 grams, like something. We weighed her every single day her whole NICU stay. A 1-year-old. Yeah. So it was this whole thing. And I remember saying to someone, I'm like, but if she was home and she was a normal baby, like we wouldn't even be focusing on this. And someone's like, yeah, but she's not a normal baby. I'm like, but she is. Like, yeah, okay, her lungs are not as great as the average Joe, but like everything else is fine. Like, let her be. Just let her be. I used to say it all the time. I'm like, just let her be. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. And my husband, I remember at the end, like, was on the phone because I couldn't even listen to rounds anymore or be there for rounds. Like, so I would make them call him. And he's like, you do not have our permission to change anything else. You are going to let our daughter be. Like, you are not to change her food. You are not to change her supplements. Like, you are only allowed to do nothing and just let her be a baby and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I
It's not that
like
hard.
weighing her every day. We only weighed John once a week, and
Every-
then it was like every 2 weeks or something. Every day. That's
yeah.
a normal human. You take a shit, and then your weight is like you fluctuate.
Uh-huh.
That's being a human.
Yep. And this all happened because they like spiraled out of control. It was actually pulmonology that spiraled in like conjunction with a new NICU attending, because we were weighing her 3 times a week. And then she was like losing weight. But again, she was PT, OT every day. She was like starting to like learn how to roll, like just doing so much stuff. And everyone's like, why are we not concerned about this? Her lungs and this. And then they were like, she needs to go back on CPAP, that somebody said at one point. And I'm like, excuse me, why? They're like, well, she's burning too many calories from breathing. I was like, no, she's burning calories because she's PO feeding and she's playing more and she's out of bed with her sister and all this stuff. And they said, yeah, but we can't know for sure that that's the case. And it could be. And I was like, she's not retracting. She's not having increased work of breathing. Her vitals are the same. They said it's very possible that she's burning more energy to look the same that she was before. I was like,
Okay.
does that make any sense?
But
Does that make any sense?
are they not doctors? Like if her vitals are the same and her blood gases are still the same, and
her blood gases were getting better and better every week.
she was just,
but they're like, yeah, no, she's burning.
Let's just put a
energy.
big old
She's
fucking mass back on this child and make her stay in bed more when now she's exercising and out and doing things that are healthy for her lungs and her heart. I think that they just had it out for you. I really think that they just, that's just wild to me.
I think so too. And you know what? It's sad because I don't think anyone intentionally was, I don't think it was intentional, but I think it got very power trippy.
Yes.
Because my husband are in the medical field, and this all started, I mean, I guess we can probably just start talking about the trach. So this all stemmed from us not wanting to proceed with the trach. So for background reference, our daughter, everything was fine with Adriana and Sophia from the time they were born. They kind of followed the same trajectory, like extubated the same day, moved from non-invasive to CPAP the same day, went from mask to prongs the same day. Like everything was the same. And then we hit a wall like sometime in January of last year where like, so Adriana kind of got stuck. And then we would like kind of go like up and down a peep here and there on her CPAP. And then like all of a sudden she just like slid back so far and we like couldn't figure out why. And the reason we ended up transferring to the NICU where she was for like majority of her time was because she just like wasn't getting better. So we did an airway evaluation to evaluate if she needed the surgery that John had. And we're like, what is going on? And then also too, like they're on the phone with the specialists every day. Cause like our NICU was like a satellite NICU of the mothership up in St. Pete. So, which also, I'm just going to put this out there as a side note. There is a Netflix documentary called Take Care of Maya about this hospital that we were at for a year, like almost a year. And one of the respiratory therapists, like 2 days before we went home, said to one of the attendings, they said, do you not realize there is a whole documentary with a lawsuit about this hospital? And you guys are like mirroring the similar situation. Like they just like wouldn't let us take her home.
Yeah.
So that's a side note. But basically, so like we ended up going up there. They like do all these airway evaluations. They look at her. They tried steroids. Like they just tried different things. And then like this whole conversation of the trach, because we were like concerned, like, is she going to need a trach? That was like our biggest, I would say, fear at that point. Like I'm sure you felt those emotions too.
Oh yeah.
And our niece had a trach the first 4 years of her life for very different reasons, but we know what it looks like on the other side, like on the caregiver side and at home.
It's a lot.
And they kept saying like, no. It totally flips your life upside down. So we, everyone at first was saying no, and then she wasn't getting better. And then we had a care conference and they said, yeah, like, we think she needs one, but we just like truly did not feel like that was where, like my husband and I are very faith-based people. And we just felt like that was not the direction that we were being pulled in. Mainly because like from a faith-based perspective, like we did not feel led there. but in a logical medical world that I think people in medicine can respect a little bit more. When she was intubated and like adequately getting her pressures, she wasn't on a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, so she's just not getting her pressures when she's on CPAP with nasal prong. So, and like, we had suggested like a mask multiple times, and everyone said, like, no, she's too old. She can't do it, blah, blah, blah. So they just kept pushing for this trach. And we had like a while where the trach team was already following her and whole 9 yards. And then we, after like a couple failed intubations, my husband was like, we don't have another option. Like, we're doing it. And I was like,
How old was she at this point?
Not that old. Like, this was in April, or no, I'm sorry. We made the decision on like May 1st, May 2nd. My husband's birthday is May 1st. She got extubated in the morning on his birthday and re-intubated 12 hours later. She was not ready to be extubated, and she was extubated to a fraction of the settings that she was getting while she was intubated. Like, it was horrible. So we made the decision like first week of May. So she would have been 40, probably like 50 something week. She was born, I'm trying to think, I forget now. Her due date was February 4th.
Okay.
I'm gonna look it up.
February 4th, this was May. So she's what, like 7 months old? 8 months old?
42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 49, 50, 51, 52. Like 52-ish weeks.
So it's still early in the trach decision world, in my opinion.
Early-ish, yeah. So, and when we first met them was in March. She was only like 43, 44 weeks gestation. So like not that far past her due date.
And they're pushing it then?
And the reason that they were pushing it then, and the reason for that, it sounded like a sales pitch in that meeting.
Right.
It's literally what it felt like. And we said, like, they're like, well, if we do it now, like, she's technically only 6 weeks old, adjusted. And if we do it now, she's not going to lose any ground with development. Like, she'll just get to go home. And I was like, yeah, but she's going to be plugged into a wall. Like, and I don't mean that in like a crass way. And like, I know like you do a phenomenal job of showing how full of a life you can live.
I don't take any
with a trach.
I don't take any of it. Like, you could say whatever. The trach, listen, it's given my son a second chance at life, and it's great, but he like actually needed it. But it's not easy. Like, it's not easy. And so I tell people, if you can avoid a trach, avoid the trach.
And you stuck out to me so much because when we had met in person that first time, you looked me in the eye and said, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. And like, that stuck with me. I'm like, here's a mom. And I went home and I told my husband, I'm like, Nicole's son has a trach. And she's saying, like, if we can avoid it, don't do it. Like, and I had talked to my sister-in-law about it. And she's like, well, I didn't get a choice. Like, she's like, so I don't know how I would feel like if I was in your shoes. She's like, she went in, our niece went in for a tube exchange in the OR. They were kind of like suspecting that her palate was like, her cleft was extending back. And she ended up like getting an emergency cric. So like, she's like, she went into the OR with a breathing tube and came out with the trach. Like, I didn't have a choice. She's like, and I don't know how I would have felt. Like, it's a lot. So we ended up scheduling the trach because my husband was like, and which was really hard on our marriage because my husband's like, I don't want her to have it, but I feel like we have no other option. So we went forward with it. I was like, I'm not signing the consent. You can do all of it. Like, you can take care of it. And that morning we went, and in my mind the whole time I was like, she's not actually going to get it. Like, I just knew, like, I felt like the Lord was like speaking to me, like, she's not actually getting a trach. That morning we were like crying on the way up there. We were both hysterical in her room. Like, her night nurse and her day nurse were like her primary nurses. We were all standing over her crib, like praying over her. Andrew's losing his mind, crying hysterically. And I was like kind of holding it together. One of my friends texted me and was like, I just want to let you know I'm fasting for you today, like in helping you, like, you know, seek clarity or whatever. And I start losing my mind. We're on the phone with my dad. My dad's praying out loud over Adriana, the whole, like, so emotional. And the nurse came in the room and was like, the OR's calling for her. And he's like, no. And we didn't do it. And so we said, the answer is not today. The answer is not never. It's just not today. And thankfully we had an attending on who was always in our corner. and really believed in Adriana and like respected us. I think if it was anyone else who works in that NICU, it would have been a different
Mhm.
outcome. And that's it. We extubated her a week later and she never got reintubated. She wore a BiPAP slash CPAP full face mask for 4 months. We alternated between a full face mask and like just a straight nasal mask, and that was it. And then she got to 2 liters of oxygen and they were like, what do you want to do? Like, we could do a G tube and you can go home tomorrow. And we were like, listen, we've made it this far. We want her home by her first birthday, but like, we're going to give her until like, we figured that timing wise, we needed to make a decision like 2 weeks before her first birthday. We're like, if she's not feeding by mid-October, we will do the trach or the G tube. And she was home first week of October 2nd. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
they're like, probably won't take a bottle. And then she's like, give me that bottle.
Yeah, give me that bottle. But all of that to say, again, like, I'm kind of just like giving pieces of our story here, but like, they did not like, so that one doctor was like in our corner, but it was very tense. And I do feel like they were out to get us in a subconscious way, because like, I don't think anyone goes into medicine to be malicious. Like, you know,
No, but
I don't think that. But
like you said, a power trip. I mean, I think I've come to see in the NICU. So we spent 7 months in the NICU and 9 months in the PICU, and they're two different worlds. In the NICU,
I wanted to go to PICU. They wouldn't let us.
oh, I love the PICU. I love my PICU people. Anyway,
No.
the NICU, I have found that when you're in the NICU, parents don't typically question anything because you have no idea what's happening. You are thrown in. It's the most traumatic experience of your life. A lot of people are first-time parents, and you just don't know. Your babies are
They
scary.
love
Like,
that.
yes, they love it because they are God. And listen, I have some amazing NICU. We've had some amazing NICU doctors, so this is not towards everyone.
Us too.
But
Our first NICU, I would never say one bad thing about, for the record. Like, our first NICU, we kiss the ground they walk on.
yes,
It was when she got older that we had an issue.
yes.
But,
And you're always going to have bad apples in every group of everything, every profession. And so, but I do think that the climate in the NICU when it comes to these physicians is you do as we say and we know best because this is what we do all day, every day. And you can't question it. And so like when you question anything, it kind of like they don't expect it. And so like for our first couple months, we didn't question a single thing. Like we were just like, yes, aye, like whatever you want.
maybe.
And then
Or maybe, yeah.
And then whenever they were like a little more stable and like I would start to question like, well, why are we giving this child like this shitty formula that's making him miserable, that has all these crappy ingredients? Like, can I bring in a different one, or can we do this? Or like my breast milk, can we just fortify like my breast milk with this instead? Like I started asking questions and they did not like it. Like, and so like just something as simple as that, I got pushback on. So I can't even imagine like the trach stuff. And it's funny because John has a trach, but like when John was 2 months old, we had
for a long time.
Yes. So I have a whole podcast episode that will come out right before this episode that I just recorded about like the trach decision. And we were so anti-trach, like so anti-trach. We had one of the physicians come in, God bless her, but she was great. But she came in when John was 2 months old. And basically, they had said he was dying. And they had said, if he makes it, someone like him is going to need a trach. And we were like shocked. That was the first time anyone said that to us. And we were like, no, he's not. And we
Really?
And we were like, no, he's not going to need a trach. Like,
is this the night that I'm baptized?
This was the day before. This was the day before.
Okay. This was that experience.
Yes. And said basically, like, I've never seen a kid as sick as he is, 23-weeker go home without a trach. And we were like, oh my God. So now you're telling us our son is dying. And then if he does live, he's going to come home with a trach and we're going to have this thing in his neck. He's going to live an awful life. We're going to have nursing. Like, what kind of life, like all these things, because growing up, you only think of trachs as like negatives. Like I didn't see any positive people with trachs. You see like the old smokers with trachs or like kids who are just like, honestly, like.
They used to make you watch those videos in middle school.
Yes.
The smokers.
Yes. And that's what you think of. And so I never really saw kids with trachs. So you just assume that they're shitty. And so anyway,
Yeah.
So I'm like, no. And so then once he lived and he started to do better, the trach kept getting brought
Mhm.
up. And my husband and I literally like made it known, like, we don't want a trach. We will do everything we possibly can to not get a trach. And some doctors would come
But I
in
think that's
and
very normal.
yeah, but there's a lot of parents that I've met that are like, "Oh, you say we need a trach," and then they get a trach, and then the kid goes home, you know, like or like gets rid of the trach in like a whole year or whatever, which is great. But it's like if they would have just
But
waited a
did they really
couple,
need it?
yeah, if they would have just waited like a couple more
Right. Yeah.
months, like you could have gone home with nothing. Like you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes it doesn't make sense to go through the whole journey just to like get the trach out like a year later. Like, and there's no shame to this. Like everybody does their own thing, but like I never regret our decision for pushing it off. And so we were like so
Mhm.
anti-trach. We were like disgusted when a doctor would come in and bring it up. Like I would look at them and be like, "You're not the one taking them home. Like it's not something like casual."
And that's true. I mean, we said
Yeah.
that to them all the time. We're like, all, and the nurses said that. They're like, we don't think about this enough. Like, people take them home and we don't see what goes on at home. Like,
You have to
you turn
make
your
your
house into an ICU.
look at my look at this as his
I
fucking
know.
nursery, okay? Is a
Yeah.
supply room. This is
It's
all
a
his
my
supplies.
closet. Yeah.
He sleeps in the living room, in a dining room. We don't have a dining room
Yeah.
table, and he sleeps out there. And it's a lot. And I'm not trying to scare people who are about to get a trach. Like
No.
it's a lot, but it's manageable, and you change your life. You do it, and it's great. And once you get a
You do
routine
it. Yeah.
down, it's great and it's fine. And I don't even see my kid with, like it's just part of him. It's $1 million necklace, I
It's
call
part
it,
of
and
it.
it's fine. But to this day, like if I could have avoided the trach and we could have made it, I would have. But we never felt like throughout this journey, before this journey, I was not very religious. And this journey has really brought me to Jesus and has been amazing for my faith, and my marriage has grown and our faith has grown in our marriage. And it's been awesome. And so, I'm grateful for that. And there was a certain sense of like, the whole time I felt in my heart he was going to need it. Like I just felt it. I felt he was going to need it, but it wasn't for sure. And I was just like, I'm going to advocate and do everything to try to avoid it because I want him to
Mhm.
not have a harder life than he needs to have. He's already been through enough. But then I went and prayed, and I was just praying over him, and he like started to decline all of a sudden after being extubated for 3 months. And I just felt like, all right, I need to start opening my heart to the trach. Like I need to start looking at positive things online, meeting other moms with trachs, and like hearing positive stories, because if I just keep hating it, it's not going to be healthy for me. This might happen. And so I was praying for signs, and I was praying over John one night, and I was crying, and I was just like, I could see he was working really hard to breathe. He was really up on his settings. They basically said they're going to probably re-intubate him soon at this point. And I prayed for a sign, and so I went down to the chapel like I did every single night when I left the hospital. I'd go down to the chapel, I'd say my prayer, and then it was just a weird thing I did. I would walk a circle in this little chapel, and then when I walked out, I'm not Catholic, and so I've always thought it's really funny, the bowl of water in the Catholic church. Like,
The
so
holy water.
yeah, the holy water. I
I'm not Catholic either.
Yeah. So I've always thought it was really funny to like just, there's holy water there. And so because of COVID times, I guess there's never been water in this little oh my God, the church, like whatever, the
Yeah.
chapel. There's
Yeah.
never been water this whole time I've been in there. And so all day I was begging God for a sign. Like, give me a sign that everything's going to be okay, and that like you're going to lead us to the right decision. Because we were still in that in between phase of like, do we just like re-intubate, or do we like go up on his settings and see if he can come down? Like, what do we do? And so it wasn't like a clear cut decision. And so I'm walking around, and every time I always put my hand in that bowl just to see if there's water in it. And there was never water in it. For 7 months, there was never water. And I'm walking out, and I just slide my hand in it, and it's full of water, and water goes everywhere. And it was just like this weird God thing of like it just felt like it was like God
I'm right
being
here.
like,
Yeah.
I'm here, like here's
Yeah.
your sign, take a deep breath, it's going to be okay. And the next day I went to the hospital, and I got a call on the way there, like he's not doing well, like we have to emergently like re-intubate him, like you need to get here ASAP. And I was almost there, and there was like, it was weird when I got there, I looked into his eyes, and he like was like saying, Mom, I'm tired. Like it was just like this, Mom, I'm tired, I've tried everything, we've tried it all, but like I need help. And I felt this sense
Mhm.
of peace that was like, we're doing the trach. And it's so funny how you go from like, fuck the trach, like I'm not doing the trach, like we're never giving my son a trach, to then the next day being like, can you schedule it for tomorrow? Like, but I had
Can I
this,
have it right now?
yeah, I had this sense of peace. And so it's like how you said, like you and your husband just didn't have peace over that decision. And so it's
It's funny that
crazy.
you had said, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you had said you always knew in the back of your mind that he was going to need it, but like we're still trying to do everything that you didn't need, because I always felt in the back of my mind, they can say whatever they want. It's all noise. Like I know in my heart she does not need it. And
Yep.
every decision, and I had talked about this on one of my videos, like what you're saying, like I always felt peace in any hard decision we had to make. Even the days that she got reintubated, I was like, I felt peace with that. I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but there's peace there.
Mm-hmm.
And the trach felt like screeching tires, like you're slamming on your brakes, you're about to get into a car. Like I can't explain how wrong it felt. And people would say like, well, that's just because you don't want it. I'm like, no, because there were a lot of things I didn't want to deliver them at 25 weeks. I didn't want her to
Mm-hmm.
get intubated. I didn't want to transfer her over an hour from our home and have 2 kids in 2 NICUs. Like there's a lot of things. And like, I just knew it. Like I knew, and I would ask God for signs, and I only listened to worship music for,
Yes.
I want to say like March to May. I only listened to worship music. Like I gave up secular music, it's really interesting. I'm listening to it again now, but it's crazy because like I would just like find so much peace in that, and like I would hear the words. Like there's this Brandon Lake song,
Love him.
oh my god, gratitude, but it's like get up and sing because there's a you've got a lion inside of your lungs. And I
Mm-hmm.
always used to, that was like spoke to me like, no, you're fine. Like there's a lion in there. Like you don't need help breathing. So yeah, it's crazy how like he does speak to us and like gives us signs and like gives us the comfort that we need. But like I knew, and I think it's a mom thing too, like your mom intuition, like you kind of just know what your kid needs. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't regret. And like we said, like if we spend, and you had said it to me, like if you spend an extra 2-3 months in the hospital. And I think the issue is that they thought they didn't, when we said like, no, she can do it in the amount of time that it would take to recover from a trach and go home, they didn't believe us. Like, so the trach ended up being scheduled for May 16th. We canceled it. But they had said to us, like, even once you get it, you're still 3 months in the hospital recovering. Like you're paralyzed for the first week. You
Minimum.
have to come on down on your setting. Minimum, if nothing goes wrong. So we were like, okay. So we ended up coming home in October 2nd. So we spent an extra couple months in the hospital, but like she's on nothing. She came home on oxygen at night, which was weaned off within the first week.
But also like
She's off every single medication. She's
th-
on 0 meds.
that's amazing. And I also
Yeah.
think it's ridiculous that like they didn't also think about the fact that you have another baby at home. Like not like a sibling, like a toddler. You had another baby at home too. So to add a trach child in,
Yeah.
like
And again, like we would always do whatever our baby needed, but like we did not believe that's what she needed. And they did not like that answer. They did not like it. And it created a lot of riff. And it came to, it's funny when you said like in the NICU, like if you question anything, they get upset. Like, so it became like, I'm not going to not advocate for my child. Like, sorry, but that's also my job. Like she's on 20 different medications. It's my job to say, hey, what's the plan with this? What are we doing about this? I'm just thinking ahead. What about that? Like, that's my job as her mom. And everything in the chart became like, per mom's request, Lasix was decreased to per mom's request. Like people were writing in the chart, trach was canceled because mom and dad couldn't agree on it. And I said to one of the NPs one day, I'm like, you write that in your note? She goes, well, that's what someone told me. I'm like, well, that's not true. She said, well, someone told me you wouldn't sign consent. I said, I didn't sign consent. I told my husband he had to, but like, that's not why the trach was canceled. And I was like, you shouldn't be writing that unless you ask me and I tell you that. So she went back and deleted it from all her notes. But like, yeah, if you say anything if like you mess up their plans, the world is ending.
well, I also think it
Brutal.
didn't help that your husband's a physician. You also work you're what, nurse practitioner, right?
I'm a nurse
Yeah.
practitioner in the
Yeah.
ICU. So like I understand ventilators, I understand tube feeding. Like, yes, it's different in the baby world, but like critical care still. Yeah.
Yes, it's different, but it's also the same mindset in certain ways. And so I think it's a power trip, but I don't know if they're maybe not threatened. That's
I
not
was
the
just like,
right
what
word.
is that? That's your vent.
Yeah, that's John. He's saying it. John says hi is what we say it is. He's probably playing. Um, but it's like, it's just so, I don't know what it is, but I think because you guys were so knowledgeable and you didn't just come at them with like, oh, because I feel like it or I said so. You were like, well, here's this,
Or I read a mommy blog post. Yeah.
yeah, you had actual like medical data and background and knowledge and schooling behind you and things like that and experience. And so I don't think anyone's ever come in and been like, can you go over the reason for all of these medicines that they're on? Because like we didn't do, I mean, most people are not going to do that or even know what they are.
And it's crazy because at our first hospital that my husband and I both, my husband has privileges there. He rounds there every day. I work there. I was literally there yesterday and saw like half her NICU people. Um, there was so much professional courtesy. And like I remember anytime I started antibiotics, they're like, any questions, anything you want to do differently, like anything you don't understand. Like it was so open. Like I remember one day when Adriana wasn't doing well. Did you like remember like they used to get Procrit like once they were old enough to not get blood transfusions anymore, they would get Procrit for like a week. I don't know if you
Mm-mm.
remember that, like back in the day, like get their blood counts up. So instead of giving her, was it Procrit? I don't remember. Anyways, I was like, hey, like since her O2 requirements are going up, like, and her blood counts are also a little bit down, like, can we try blood and see if maybe that helps? Because like that usually helps your oxygen requirements.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
no problem. Yeah, let's try it. Great idea. Like it was so much professional courtesy. And my husband said to them all the time at this hospital, like, there is no professional courtesy. Like, we're not trying to run the show. We're not pediatricians, but like, respect the fact that we do have knowledge and understanding and stop trying to like talk down to us all the time. My
Mm-hmm.
husband said one time he looked one of the doctors in the eyes and was like, I would never, ever, ever treat my patients and their family members the way that you treat us. Never. He said, if a patient told me that they didn't want chemotherapy for whatever reason, I say, what are your goals and how can we help you achieve them? Not look at them and say, well, you're not following standard of care. And we're trying to find something to accommodate you. Like, that's not, mhm,
The whole
yeah.
standard of
So,
care thing is like, we
standard of care for trachs with BPD, I should say.
all the kids are so different though. It's so funny to me. Like, and I think that this could be an issue of like the hospital itself. So not just the NICU. So we were at St. Joe's in Tampa. That's where we spent our time in the NICU and then in the PICU. And then when we transferred to Johns Hopkins, we were there for like 9 days in the PICU for John's surgery. It was a
Wait,
whole
out of there.
it was a whole different world. Yeah. I'm not gonna it wasn't awful, but it was like
It's different.
so by the book, so rule following. There was a like he needed pain meds. I couldn't just go to like the nurse practitioner or the attending, like the doctor on. I had to go to the pain management team and then find them to do that. And then like he needed his milk and like we already had like an open can of formula because like I provided the formula because I was very picky on what he got. Like he was very sensitive to things. They would not let us mix it in the room. And we were like, well, this is the only can I have left because the rest, like there's a shortage. It was Kendamil at the time. There was a shortage. The rest is being mailed to my house. And so like, this is all I have. I have one can. It's already been opened. It's full, but like, I don't have one. My mom's bringing them in like a day when Target delivers them. So like, this is all I have. They were like, well, the formula room can't take it because it's been open. And then my
You're
husband
like,
said, well, I can just mix it right here for you. If you legally can't, I'll do it. And she goes, but it'll make a mess. And my husband goes, but I'll clean it. And like, it was just like, it was so weird. And like, every time we like asked for something from the nurse, like, there's just no autonomy there. Like, it was very much like, it was just so by the book, so regimented, which maybe for a bigger hospital, they have to be that way. And maybe I don't know. Whereas in our PICU, it's very much like, woo, we just do it. Like they just do whatever they want. The nurses have so much like discretion. Like the
yeah.
the doctors are like so much more personable. Like I don't know. It was just very, very different vibes. I mean, really my favorite part about that hospital was the cafeteria. I thought that they had great food for great prices, but also like our cafeteria sucked. So like Jordan and I like missed that. We missed that cafeteria a lot. But other than that, the rooms were really nice, but it was different. It was so different. And so I'm wondering if it's like just like that hospital, the way that they like that hospital is like
I don't
very
know.
narrow and by the book.
I don't know because I get so many messages from moms, like multiple messages a day from women, like asking me, like, how did you navigate this? Like, oh, this, or like if I'll post something like, a negative
Yeah.
experience, like a story. Oh my gosh, this same thing happened to us. Like, I hear about it all over the place. And my husband and I always say, like, anytime I get messages, I'll be like, look at this. He's like, what is it with neonatologists? Like, I don't get it. And I don't want to sit here and like shit on them because, like, yes, they do amazing things. I think it's for people like us who don't have the straightforward cases or have the lengthier stays. Like, it's not, I don't know. It's just like they just want to like do their thing and move on, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I get a lot of messages from moms. And my husband, it's funny, he did his fellowship in oncology at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore.
Hmm.
Like he calls it the real Johns Hopkins.
Hmm.
And he said them like to one of their faces one day, like, it's a shame because I trained at the real Johns Hopkins and you guys really put the name to shame. Like, you're not Johns Hopkins. You guys are a community hospital that has a Johns Hopkins name on it. And it like, yeah, whatever. But
I
and
mean,
again, I
but
don't want to just like sit here and shit on the hospital because there was a lot of good too. I think it got so nasty that like we got treated poorly by people who probably didn't even intentionally mean to do it, but like egos got in the way. And I don't think they're bad doctors. I don't think they're bad people, but I think egos got in the way.
mhm,
And whether, and we, like, my husband and I are godly people. Like, we did things and said things and acted in ways that we're not proud of. But like, when you're fighting for your child every day, like, I'm
mhm.
always going to put my kid before how your impression of me.
Yeah. Well, it's personal. That's your child, and you will literally be mama bear if
Mhm.
you have to. I mean, and I don't know
And
if
I,
you don't have to share them, but you've told me some of the things that they've said to you, and like just little snide
oh, I,
comments and other things that are like mind boggling. That I can't believe
yeah.
it.
They asked, like one day, they were like, well, do you want her to go to an Ivy League school or do you want her to be a dumb model? Because every day that she sits in this hospital without a trach, like she's losing IQ points that she's never going to get back. So my husband's running joke now, like, maybe she lost some IQ points. She won't be able to cut it as an oncologist, but I think she'll still be able to swing it as a neonatologist.
I
I'm like,
love it.
Andrew.
I love it.
But he's like,
I think you're right. The pride
like,
got in the like the just eh, it's so sad. And then what happens too is like I think it's like a small little world in these NICUs, even if they're a large NICU, but like all it takes is like a couple doctors to just like not like you very much or just kind of have their, pride hurt. And then they start kind of bad mouthing or just saying certain things to the rest of the team. Then nurses have this impression, but nurses usually will figure it out because they're like there and they'll be
100%.
like, they like kind of know the real story. But like all the different people start to like have this opinion and then they go into conferences and care things with you with just this already like prejudged thing when they haven't even met you. And then they read the chart and it's like, mom said this, mom said that, like you're some crazy lady. And it's like,
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I asked a question.
yeah, it's
Yeah. And my husband said to them, he's like, we should not be vilified for asking questions. We should never be vilified for asking a question. And I'm
it's
dying to know, maybe when I get a little bit closer with our pediatrician, the first day we met him, he was like, before we started the whole like top to down, like whole thing with Adriana, he's like, I just want you to know, like, you should never feel bad about advocating for your child. And you should always make medical teams feel like they are backed into a corner with their backs against the wall, like having to answer to why you're doing certain things. He's like, that is your child. And I'm like, my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, what was said? Because they did a verbal sign out because she was there for so long. And we're like, what was said? Like, what did they tell you about us? Because like him and I have a great relationship. Like he just lets me kind of have He's very like professional courtesy, whatever. Like we work for the same company. So it's interesting. But I'm like, really? Like, what were they saying about us? Like,
Well, that is their job
he's
though
like, you should.
too, is to answer questions and to tell you like we only had to fire one doctor in the NICU. And it was when John
I wish we could hire.
oh, well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a thing, but I literally it was the day, it was that day that John was so sick and we woke up and it was the new change of doctors, right? And so it was our first day with this doctor and she called us. We were at home and she called us really early just to give us like the daily update or whatever. But she basically said, "Listen, like he's dying. There's nothing else we can do. Like I'm going to send the comfort care to your room." Like this is how nonchalant she was. And I was just like,
What?
yeah, she was just like, yeah, like there's for kids like this, like there's really nothing else we can do. He's maxed out. And I was like, well, what about this? What about that? You know, because I had researched all these things from different moms who had been through this with 23 weekers and had made it. And she's like, no, that won't work. And there was no like reason why it wouldn't work. She's like, no, no, we're you know, whatever. And I was just like, so we hung up the phone and like got to the hospital like right away. And I looked at our nurse who was like one of John's main nurses and she was awesome. She said, well, you know, you can like ask to like have the doctor off your case and get a new doctor. And she's like, and your favorite doctor just started on this week. So you can like go to the charge and tell them. And I was like, okay, thank you. And so I went and did that, but it was like later in the day. And so of course that doctor was already gone. But then this was like, you know,
Yeah.
30 minutes later, the on-call doctor came in and basically then he told us like, yeah, he has hours today to live, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, it was the same doctor that delivered me, Miss Dr. Bad News
Oh,
Doctor.
Dr. Bad.
Dr. Bad
Yeah.
News Doctor. God bless him. But yeah. And so, but then the next day, this doctor came in that we had worked with that we loved. And I had a list of things of like, can we try this? Can we try that? Like, can we do this? And he was so great. He sat down with us and he was like, no, I don't think we're quite there yet. Like on this one. And I was like, we're not there yet. Like, okay. And then he's like, and
Like you said, there's nothing else. Yeah.
yeah, and then he's like, and this one, nah, that's maybe a good idea. Let me go read a couple journals about it. Like he was so open and he was like willing to do anything and he was willing to try new things. And he sat
Yeah.
there and was so patient with us. And like we had just baptized our son at 7 o'clock the night before. And my mom was talking about finding a funeral home for him, like was searching for a funeral home. Like this was where we were. And so, but this doctor was so
Yeah.
great. And so thank God for that. But like this other doctor, like fuck her. She sucks, but everybody hates her there. And she's literally, I'm shocked she's not fired by now, but that's how she was. Like, you know, this is the hardest journey of a lot of people's lives that they'll ever go through.
Yeah.
And so by treating these parents like this and not just like taking a step back and being gracious and giving grace, you know, I get it. You kind of go numb to it. And like, you know, you probably understand, like you work in the world for so long, you kind of get numb to it and you kind of take the personal experience out of it because that's sometimes the only way you can survive in this world because it's hard, the things that you see.
For sure.
But sometimes it's like, take a step back and you could really tell which doctors knew how to do this, who knew how to take a step back and give the parents grace because like, this is just not fun. Like this is a nightmare. And so
it's your baby.
yes. And you are just spiraling.
Like I deal with people's grandparents.
Yes. And God bless them, but that's different. Okay. This is it.
But it like sometimes it is time and you have to be blunt. Like not when I'm talking about somebody's little teeny tiny baby. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just wild to me that they, you know, it's just sad. And it breaks my heart that you and other people have these unfortunate experiences. You know, I've heard, you know, people having just different situations that were negative, but like I haven't met really anybody that's had such a just full, for the most part, negative experience with physicians like that. I mean, you had great nurses. You praise your nurses and stuff all the time, which thank God that you had that.
Some bad ones that started rumors about us and yeah. But, and I don't want to say it was every physician because there were also some physicians that came up to us at the end and said like, I will change the way I practice because of Adriana.
Good.
Like she has taught me so much in doing this 20 years. But I would say for the most part on that day of discharge, we had like the doctor who is in charge of the trach team, who I call the devil doctor because of a Bible verse that stuck out to me that I was like, oh my gosh, she's the devil. It was Ephesians 6:18. I think it's like, put on your armor of God to protect yourself from the devil's schemes. And it was like, she was the first person that popped into my mind. And I was like, no, I'm just being bitter. And then like she would start saying nasty things to us. And I'm like, nope, that's her. Like that was what God was saying. Like, watch out for her. But that day she was on service on another team. She walked past our room with her little wow and her little Chanel shoes and Prada belt, Hermes belt, whatever, like 5 times, never once popped her head in and was like, I'm so happy for you. I wish you the best of luck. Made eye contact with us, never said a word. I don't respect you. I don't respect you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, she had said to me one day, she's like, oh, my assessment of your marriage is that your husband puts all the decision making on you. And it reminds me a lot of my marriage. So like, don't feel like these are really hard. And especially as a woman with a career, I really understand, where you might be feeling right now, blah, blah, blah. Like, stupid. I'm like, don't talk. No, 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 nope, nope. And then like later one day, like months later, my husband was like yelling at her on the phone, whatever she's like, I don't understand why you guys don't like me. I'm like, really? I'm like, you really don't understand? Yeah.
Oh,
I remember one day, this is a funny story. She said to me, she came in the room. She's like, do you not want to talk to me? Because if you don't want to talk to me, you can wait until Monday when the next attending comes on. She avoided me for like a whole week one time. Or 2 weeks, sorry. She's like, she told the nurse practitioner, I'm not calling or talking to mom the rest of the time I'm on service. You can't do that just because we have an argument. You need to be the bigger person. You are caring for my child. You can't not talk to my child or talk to me about my child. She was just going to let everybody else
this
do it.
isn't high
But she
school. This
said
is
to me one day,
ugh.
this isn't high school, like petty. Oh my gosh. So she said to me one day, she was like going through data and she's like, I know you think that I just like to trach everybody. She's like, but that's not true. If you look at our numbers, I don't remember the exact numbers, but like, let's just say, for example, she goes, out of 35 patients that we followed on the trach team, only 32 of them got trachs. So it's not like all of them get trachs. I'm like, that's like 90 something percent.
That's like the worst
like,
data you could ever give.
I'm like, what? And she was the one that like gave us the sales pitch the first time in the care conference. She was just like, nah. She had it out for us from day one. Like, we met her our first weekend there, and she was like, how do you think she looks? Does this look like a healthy baby to you? And I was like, well, Dr. So-and-so said he doesn't think she's going to need a trach. She goes, I guess time will tell. We'll see about that. Like and I said, I'm like, you just have always wanted her. And like, you can't accept the fact that she now doesn't need this. Like we can do a whole podcast episode just on her, like the amount of things that she has said to me. But yeah, and like that, like people like her kind of ruin it for the whole experience.
Yeah.
And then you get kind of people that like, people respect her. So then she gets in other people's ear and it kind of just like bleeds out.
It's like high school. That's
she's
so
like, well,
sad. It's so
there
sad.
was a handful that were lights, but I can name like 4 that were lights to us, and the rest were just like,
yeah, but the darkness always is the one that overpowers and you feel the most. And then you're walking on eggshells.
And how dark it was it wasn't just negative comments here and there. Like, it was how dark it was. And they had control over our child.
The comment, does this look like a healthy baby to you? Well, no, she was born at 25 weeks and she's got a lot of issues going on. She isn't quite healthy. Like, what the hell do you expect me to say to that? Like, what a stupid, like
do you think I'd be here?
Question. Yeah, no, she's fucking great. Let me take her home now.
Yeah.
I just transferred her here, stupid. Like, of course she's not healthy. Oh my God. I'm so sorry that you have to go through that.
It was just, it was like one, and I have very tough skin, and like, I have the Holy Spirit, so I'm good. Like, we're, like I said, very faith-based people, so like, I don't know how you go through this without faith, but it was dark. It was really, really dark. Like, I can understand why people feel the way that they feel going through this.
But it's such a test that God has put you through, and the devil just kept throwing things at you, and you just kept following your heart, and you kept following what Jesus was telling you. And, like you said, that one doctor on discharge day that said, like, she has changed the way that I will now treat other patients and look at their course of action and stuff. And so, you know, as a mom, like that's got to feel like that's, you know, if my daughter's story could impact
This
just
was worth it.
one surgeon, like, or one physician that can now give one parent who's coming into my situation a little bit more grace than I got, then it's all worth it, you know, if it can just help one
Yeah.
person.
And 100%. And that's what we said. Like, this is bigger than us. Like,
Yes.
God needs Adriana there, and that's why she's there. Not because she doesn't need to be home. She needs to be here doing something that we don't understand, and it's so painful, but like, it is bigger than us.
Yes. I know. And it's so funny. Like you
Thank
started
you.
sharing like your NICU journey on TikTok and like a lot of like behind the scenes stuff that you've never shared before. And so many, I see so many people commenting on like your new videos are like, make a part 3 of a NICU journey. We want to see it. And I'm like, the people are asking, Danielle, you need to deliver. So hopefully they'll be able
I
to get a
know.
lot of answers with this. But I mean,
Yeah.
gosh,
This,
you,
and I'll keep sharing.
yeah, it's just so sad. Like this journey is already hard enough. And so for these hospitals sometimes to make it harder. It's just, and you know, if you're a physician watching this, which you're probably, honestly, I don't know why anyone would take the time to watch this if you're a physician, but you know, take a step back and just remember that like these moms are like in the most vulnerable state of their entire life. And it's so hard. And so just take a step back and just try to lead with a little bit of grace and
Yeah.
just kind of try to put yourself in their shoes because nobody wants to go through this. And it's just really hard. And I don't know. I mean, what would be like your, if you could give one piece of advice to a mom that's going through the journey, that's really, you know, trying to advocate, but getting pushback. And so like, what piece of advice would you give?
Take, go with your gut.
Okay.
Go with your gut. And I think that's a broad term for people who like, who aren't religious can kind of relate to that. Cause I think your like mom's intuition definitely plays into this. Like,
Yes.
you know, mom knows best. Mom knows best. And I think there's a difference between like not wanting, like you were saying, like you knew in the
Mm-hmm.
back of your mind, like deep
Yes.
down that he was going to need it, but you were trying to do everything to avoid it. But like your gut is not, I just feel like mom's intuition is a real thing. And don't be afraid to stand up for what and advocate for your child. This is your child,
Mm-hmm.
your baby. And if you were home, if your baby was born and got to go home, like you wouldn't be having this battle. So like, yes, I don't want to sit here and shit on a NICU because like they do incredible things,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still your baby. And those people have the privilege. My husband and I always said that to them. Like, you have the privilege of caring for our daughter. She is our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So do not be afraid to stand up and open your mouth and ask questions. And that's your baby.
Yep. I
Don't be
100% agree. I think there's something about the NICU that unfortunately takes a lot of autonomy away from a mom. You know, you don't really have much autonomy. And so you have to remind yourself, you know, I think the first couple months, especially if you're going to be in a long-term NICU situation, you know, micro preemie or a baby that has a lot of different health conditions and you're expecting to be there for a long time, you know, give yourself grace. The first few months, you might not ask a lot of questions. You might not advocate that much. You might, because you don't know what the hell's going on. And so,
And I think they're that little, like we were like, whatever you say. And it's true. Like, what was I going to add to that? You know, like
yeah.
there is standard of care for a micro preemie. But
Yes.
like, I think when they get a little bigger and things aren't so black and white, like, yeah, open
Especially
your
once
mouth.
they're like
Don't be afraid.
they're like term, like once they hit
Yeah.
like that, it's like, all right, well, let's start to evaluate like this child as a baby and not just a little potato.
Mhm.
And
And I
so,
wouldn't wish on anyone,
no.
but it was also like so incredible. Like, we got to watch our babies grow, which is like, I would have preferred not to, but like,
Yes, I
there was a sense
absolutely
of it
would
that
have
was also
preferred
very
not to.
beautiful, like in a effed up way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
do
Would
you
not
ever see
recommend.
like a yeah, 10 out of 10 don't recommend. But like I'll have a friend post a picture of their bump and they're like 26 weeks or whatever, you know. And I'm always just like
I'm like, oh,
I'm
never
like,
had.
But no, but I always think in my mind, I'll go back to a picture of John at 26 weeks. I'm like, I know what that child looks like in your stomach. Like you have no idea.
Yeah.
And they share like the sonogram pictures, you know, of their face and like, oh, squishy and how cute. I'm like, no, bitch, if that baby came out right now,
Not
it would
you.
not be cute. It looked like a little alien squirrel. Like you think that this baby is all chubby and cute, but it's like it just makes me
Yeah.
laugh.
They have no skin.
Yeah, so it's like to have a whole
It is
different
funny.
perspective that like, you know, ignorance is such
If you don't
bliss.
laugh,
Like I
you'll
knew
cry.
nothing. Yeah, I knew none of this. Yeah, if you don't laugh, if you don't, yeah, you'll cry. Exactly. Like our humor,
Who
the
knows what will
trauma
happen if you don't laugh? Yeah.
trauma humor is a real thing. You don't realize it. You might, but like you sharing your journey from the start and being vulnerable from the start and just sharing everything. You have no idea how many parents that has helped. You have no idea. That has helped so many parents. And I'm sure you've gotten messages from people being like, "Thank you for sharing this," or they needed help or they need
Yeah.
reassurance. And even for me, it was like, "Oh my God, another mom," because I was not sharing John's journey until he was like think like 9 months. Like I didn't,
Older.
yeah, I didn't share his face. I didn't share anything. I wasn't ready for that because I just wasn't there. I wasn't brave enough in a certain way. And so for you to share it, and I always say anyone who shares it from the beginning too, because it's such a vulnerable stage, you never know what's going to happen, is so
Right.
helpful for there's so many quiet people behind the scenes that might not even message you, but you're really helping them. Like I would show my husband like, oh, look at this, you know, like look at Danielle's twins and look at, you know, like there's so many different parents. And it's like people might not even message you, but you're helping so many people to share that because it's not something that's really fun to share online. But there's a way
Oh
to
no.
sometimes like the trauma humor with it too. And it just helps so
Mhm.
many people. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that
Yeah.
will thank you. And I thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your entire journey with the world. And it's helped a lot of moms and a
Thank
lot of
you.
parents.
Grateful for you. Thank you.
I know.
Happy to be here.
I can't wait. We're going to get the kids together this summer or like late
Yeah.
spring.
We need to go to
Once
the zoo.
we're going to go to the
Yeah.
zoo and it's going to be great.
Hmm.
John has 2 more
Yeah.
girlfriends that he has to meet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cold and flu season will be behind us.
Oh, and I also want to
Maybe
make
some.
it known that like, both her girls made it through like multiple different viruses and colds already, totally
With no
fine
hospitals. Yeah.
with no admissions. So
Yep.
I would just like to like let the people know at Johns Hopkins that she's doing great and she's made it through that. So like suck it because that's a
One of
huge
the things that
testament.
was to us, we wanted her to go home without oxygen. We said, if she's capable to go home without oxygen, we want to do that. And the pulmonologist was like, why? What's the point in doing that if she's just going to be on it the first time she gets sick again? But like, okay, yeah. So she went on it when she was sick. It was like 2 days. And then the second time she got sick, it was 12 hours. And the last time she got sick, she wasn't on it at all. So like we're very happy to have it in the house. And we have like a pulse ox monitor in the house. Like we have all the medical tools if we need them. We haven't needed them in like 2 months. But like, so what?
And you guys, you
So
take her everywhere and do everything because you just continue to live your
we are very
life,
brave.
which I
But
love.
our mindset with that, though, is that her baseline is pretty good. So
Yes.
our thought is like, if she gets sick and ends up on, it'll be oxygen for some time. It's not going to be, if she had a trach, we probably would be hunkered down like you. Like, I don't blame you at
Yeah.
all. But yeah, we're brave with that. They come everywhere
Well,
with
and
us.
I also look at it as like you brought Sophia every day to the hospital to see her, and you were out doing things with Sophia. So in my mind,
Correct.
her immune system was growing in the NICU. Like she was like being exposed to different germs, and like you're not gonna like
Mhm.
keep her sister from her. So it's very different. Whereas like
Correct.
her immune system has been able to be built up, and I don't know, I love it. I'm envious of it, but like one day we'll get
Next
there, and
year you'll be up there.
yeah, next year we're gonna be just like hitting the town, all of us together. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's gonna be wonderful.
It'll be great. It's all temporary. And that's the thing with all of this. And I would tell moms that too, whether you're in a long NICU journey or if you're, living at home with a trach or whatever it is, like it's all temporary. Like this will all be behind you if you're the mom of a micro preemie. Like it does get better.
It does. It does. And there's a lot of trauma to it, but it gets better and you're not alone. Find moms online. There's a lot of different support groups. There's a lot of different people on TikTok and Instagram who are brave and share their journey. and you're not alone. You might feel alone because it's a very small class of people, but it really isn't as small as you think. So thank you for being here on the Daily Vent, a medical mom podcast. I want to thank Danielle for being here today. She is awesome. Danielle, if you want to let people know where they can follow you and continue following you and your daughter's story, go ahead and let them know your different social accounts or however else you share your journey.
So on TikTok and Instagram, it's the same. It's at Danielle, DanielleP, like Paul, and then my last name, Marple, Marple, on both Instagram and TikTok.
Perfect. You should definitely, everyone go follow
Yes.
her. She is super fun, shares lots of day in the lives, and her daughters are adorable and just like making such progress. It's amazing to see. Since she's come home, Adriana, since she's come home, it's like night and day. Like I can't
Crazy.
believe it. They're just such miracles, these kids. So, all right. Well, thank you for
All
being
of them are.
here, and we will see you next time.